No, get those lights off. Off. Turn them off. They're too bright. Turn them off. Turn them off. Let's go. Ready? Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn them off. So much nicer.
Yes, welcome folks. Left Reckoning 62, where we are in complete control of the lighting. So much nicer.
In this country. No, Trump's outlining the GOP and now the Biden administration's policy towards the vast majority of us when it comes to electrical policy. Turn off the lights, baby.
Look, that's what I say. When somebody has an overhead light on, the ceiling lights, are you kidding me? Get a lamp on. So much nicer.
I didn't realize you were light sensitive, Matt. Makes sense.
I'm pretty light sensitive, yeah.
Well, we got a hell of a lot coming up for y'all today. We're going to be talking very soon, joined by return guest Kurt Hackbarth, who's a journalist out of Mexico, to talk about AMLO, his recent recall election, and even more materially, why the right wing is so obsessed with fighting his very common sense, in my opinion, public energy policies. A little bit later, too, we're going to be talking about the recent news from the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and it is very not good.
Not good, folks, but vindicates a call that we made, and we'll treat it as if we made a preseason prediction that the Timberwolves were going to make the playoffs, and do a little bit of pat ourselves on the back. Yeah, because, not good supporting Chantel Brown. No, thank you.
And later in the evening, in the post game for our subscribers only, we're going to be taking a little bit of a dive into one of the most dystopian events I've seen in a while, which was Elon Musk's very, very strange and dystopian Giga Rodeo. To use the California version of saying that, he had a very strange event. We'll be breaking it down. Also, some stuff from Jen Psaki, and as always, your questions and voicemails.
What was your? I just want to say real quick, what was your exposure to rodeos growing up? Because there's a big. My hometown's got I don't know if it's the biggest rodeo in North Dakota, but I think it is. At least that's some little hometown pride in my hometown, Mandan. Where you can literally, when it's going on, you can hear the crowds just across the entire town. And there's giant fireworks, and often there's they also do some sort of what do they call it? Destruction derby racing there too. But
I mean, one of my earliest memories actually is there's this game where they put basically a bow on the back of a calf, and they let all the kids run around, and the one who gets it wins some kind of a prize. And I must have been really young, because I just remember sort of being in it and being really excited because I wanted to get it. But then seeing the absolute mayhem and kids getting knocked over and crying, and just being very, I don't know, just really shook me a little bit. But no, I mean, I'll tell you, I've been to way more rodeos than Elon Musk certainly has. So.
Rodeo clowns were a magical sort of archetype for a child growing up. I figured pretty cool, but yeah.
But we got something to get to first. A little bit of mayhem right here in the state of Texas. I don't know. Did you want to bring it up first, Matt?
Yeah. So I mean, by the looks of it, there's absolute pandemonium going on in your home state. Fox News is on the case. We got this here, and what's funny about this story to me is as long as I've been professionally doing this, there've been these occasional stories about the caravans of migrants, and they've always been embellished, so we say, by the right. This time they're literally we'll just buy the bus ourselves. But anyway, here's Fox News covering this story.
Alert. Remember when Greg Abbott said in Texas that if the federal government is going to drop migrants off in Texas, we will provide them free bus rides to our nation's capital. That is a bus with 2 or 3 dozen migrants on board. We believe
it just rolled into Washington.
It just rolled into Washington. I think they initially wanted to drop off the migrants at the U.S. Capitol, but I think as close as they could get would be near Union Station.
They're being processed on the bus.
They're being processed. They're inside right now.
It kind of looks like a Columbus Circle right there. So that is what Jen Psaki referred to as, well, that's just a publicity stunt.
Nope, it's not.
That's not going to happen. Well, ladies, alert.
I mean, it still could be a publicity stunt.
Most definitely is one. I mean, the interesting question there is if, the Texas government is paying to traffic people across state lines, are they guilty of human trafficking in the United States? I mean, but this is a stunt through and through, and Greg Abbott loves doing things like this. This is his kind of bread and butter are these big kind of publicity stunts. I wanted to talk. I mean, unless you have it. I mean, obviously it's a joke.
I just got a couple things to say. Like one, the like laughter in her voice, like when she says like they're in there, is so gross to me. Like these are human beings, for Christ's sakes. And there's like follow-up interviews where someone's like, "Yeah, I'm from Venezuela. I knew like I'm being used as a like a prop basically by a governor of Texas." Or Texas leadership. And what I want to do is get to Miami. So thanks for it's easier to get there from DC.
Lift, yeah.
So thanks for the lift, guys.
Yeah. I mean, obviously like this is purely that kind of stuff is purely for Fox News people. I can't imagine that the actual, I mean, maybe we'll see, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I can't imagine the actual amount of people that they'll be bringing over will be anything significant. I mean, this is purely for, a large part of the country that likes to consume most of their news from Fox News.
Right. And also like, and then they're like, and they're being processed on the bus. So we can there's a process we can put these people through. Like, fine. This seems like if they're going to get able to like go, like move on with their life at this point, that seems like fine to me. Actually, that's a good model of how this process should work. Bus them all over the place. Thanks, Texas, for all that bus budget.
Well, I mean, that's like clearly is a human catastrophe. But I want to talk a little bit before we bring Kurt on about another catastrophe, which has been a stunt that has gone hand in hand with this one that is getting a lot of attention from folks. Which has been Abbott's new push to have state troopers and the DPS double up customs inspections in Texas. So Abbott, and this fits in with a theme, by the way, of his government, where he's really leaning on his executive powers, which should constitutionally in Texas should be very, very weak. And he's really built a lot of that power out of whole cloth. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but he's gone through another big push here. Another stunt that he's doing has been to have the state troopers inspect all commercial vehicles that are coming into the state of Texas from Mexico. And boys and girls, this has been an absolute disaster. Just on the daily level, there's over $70 million worth of goods that enter into the state of Texas from Mexico. And these trucks have been stuck and delayed for days upon days. And a lot of the things that are being brought over the border are food, which means that trucks who are sitting there on the highway in high heat, right? It's hot here right now. And food is rotting on these trucks. It has been a real embarrassment to Greg Abbott. And I just want to break this down because there's some funny stories here. And it also like really does reveal a lot of the ways that Abbott has been governing lately. So this is from Scott Braddock. Excuse me. Actually, let me bring that up in 1 second. The first person who really started publicizing this and alerting people in the state about this disaster that is likely going to start to hit us over the next week or so, as we see all of these major delays and things being brought into the state of Texas. One of the first people to push this is Sid Miller, who is the agriculture commissioner here in Texas. And he's a Republican. He by no means is any kind of lefty progressive, but he recognizes that what's been going on here is a complete disaster. And he got a lot of buzz as he was starting to make this point clear to people that Abbott's kind of stunt show here is having real material effects on the food that goes on to millions of Texans' plates. So Abbott today went down to Laredo, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But he came at Sid Miller, saying, this is from Scott Braddock, asked about GOP Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller's criticism of the border blockade, Governor Abbott says he had no clue what we were doing as far as trying to negotiate with Mexican governors. He was just completely uninformed, Abbott said of Miller. And there might be a reason for that, actually. If, Matt, you want to play that video here. Because here's Sid Miller talking in February about the state of the relationship that he has with the governor of Texas. And remember, I don't think I need to say this twice, but Texas is a major agricultural state. This is a very, very important part of our government. And just listen to the way that Greg Abbott is dealing with the actual business of running this state.
Mm-hmm. Do you and the governor speak often at this point?
It's odd you say that. I've tried numerous times to get a meeting with the governor. In the 7 years that we've both been in this office, our offices, never got a meeting with the governor. We've never got a phone call returned. Never got an email or letter returned.
Do you and the
Jesus?
I mean, that is
this guy's totally uninformed.
Well, because it shows what I've been saying for a long time to folks, that Greg Abbott is much, much more interested in playing governor on TV and sort of, exciting his base than the actual business of running a state of 34 million people. And I think that those are places that you really need to be hitting him. So again, this has been a real disaster. And I think people, especially in Texas, have probably seen a lot on this so far because, there's been all of these videos and pictures of just, miles of trucks stuck on the border. And it's also worth noting, too, that Abbott is saying that he's doing this for public safety. And yet, despite all of this harassment, so basically every commercial truck that comes into the United States from Mexico is already inspected by customs. Right. So there already is a process to look for illicit goods and things of that nature. All this has done is just double up on that, using, state troopers who are not equipped or trained or used to doing that kind of work. And they're also doing these checks further. They're doing them across the state, which is creating just, logistical traffic jams all across the state of Texas. And as I've said earlier, it's been an absolute disaster, and it's going to mean higher prices for people. It's going to mean more inconvenience. But anyways, this is just one of those moments where, Abbott wanted to, stand really tall on something and almost immediately had to eat crow on this, because today, as everybody's been making a big deal about this, he went down to Laredo to negotiate with the governor of Nuevo Leon. So this is right here from Forrest Wilder. This is sort of, because this just happened a few hours ago. Abbott has now agreed to have DPS stand down on truck inspections in Nuevo Leon in exchange for some yet unspecified border security measures. Inspections will continue for trucks from all other Mexican states. Abbott, of course, tried to make a big show about this. And it just is like a very interesting political moment for Abbott, because he's not, him doing these kind of like stupid political stunts is not new, but this one just immediately backfired on such a material level. So he negotiated this deal with the governor of Nuevo Leon, and also, but also as of yet, as far as I know, has not come to an agreement with all of the other governors whose states border Texas. And I'm going to share this right now because people might not be familiar with the geography here. But let's just see the big win that Abbott got here for efficiency, see how much landmass he sort of covered up. So this red bit is Nuevo Leon, and this is the bit of the border, which will now be uninhibited. And it's pretty good. I don't want to completely dismiss it. Obviously, that is a very important, that border is very important. A lot of commerce does come through there, but you can see how the kind of symbolic victory that Abbott is trying to push right now is very, very far from any kind of solution to this problem. Again, completely manufactured. No need for this. No real need for this other than trying to seem tough to boys in Tennessee who watch Fox News to, who are going to, because Abbott is certainly going to try to run for the president of the United States in the near future. And this is exactly what he's trying to do. And he uses this state and the people here, and most certainly the human beings in Mexico, as a to try to beat his chest from time to time.
So I'm curious about this. So like that, and I buy your assessment of the motivations there. There's another one that sort of I just want to put out there, and I don't necessarily subscribe to, but there was a resistancy conspiracy theory about the convoy in Canada that was also meant to basically gum up the border crossing to keep the economy, basically keep Uncle Brandon and Justin Trudeau's economies from being good. And I wonder, like, if that, like, is that the only plausibility there is like they're gassed up by campaign people who are thinking that way and decide like, okay, let's go for this, and then rubber hits the road and it's like, okay, we need to like run this back a little bit. This is going to massively backfire.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, no doubt about this. And I think it's notable. We've made this point time and time again that in the kind of complete absence of like a real opposition, political movement in the state, the only direction that Abbott has to face is to his more far right people. Because, for example, one of the people who he ran against in the GOP primary said they would shut down completely all trade with Mexico, which again would be an absolute disaster, not just for Texas, but for the United States and certainly for Mexico. And almost every person with sense made that point that this was a completely ridiculous argument. But you see now that Abbott is basically saying when he's been interviewed on this that, well, I know that people want to have trade, but I also know a lot of people are very happy to have us, make a strong presence on our border. Again, this is not really appealing to the vast majority of people. It's appealing to a bunch of completely loony tuned folks, and not to get too geographical folks, but in East Texas, as far away from the border as you're really going to get here. But I do just want to, remind people of what, the opposition is doing here and make two quick points, because this is all about Title 42. And Greg Abbott is trying to attack Biden over Title 42. And if people remember, we've criticized Title 42 on this show. It is, it's basically using the COVID pandemic to try to shut down, immigration or migration. It has extremely racist implications and a history here. And it's notable, one, because of that history, which is really nasty, but two, this is something that I'll be writing about more. There's going to be a lot more stuff coming from me on Greg Abbott, the way that he's been governing and what his legacy really is going to be for the way the system runs in the state of Texas. But it's a really notable thing that Abbott, first this sending people to DC, and this order here to have the state troopers inspect commercial vehicles, is all coming from him overextending his executive power, right? He is using executive power in ways that have never been done in the history of the state of Texas. And that's something that has, short-term immediate consequences and long-term consequences. I also wanted to note too, that when he's talking about Title 42, there's an irony. For a governor who has made it very, very clear that he doesn't really consider COVID to be a threat and hasn't considered to be a threat in a very long time, he continues to declare a state of emergency so that he can use those emergency powers that are given to him by the state constitution to deal with, a kind of health pandemic like this, so that he can do things do these insane border stunts, so that he can do things like, try to override local governments, right? He is using the COVID pandemic to increase his power despite having no real interest in speaking to this. I just wanted to also highlight, because it's worth noting the his opponent in the upcoming election, what Beto has been up to. Now, Beto has is just like Abbott, is not somebody who is very allergic to a good photo op. He's showed up at the border. He's talked about this failure of a policy. But let's talk a little bit materially about what Beto thinks should be done. Now, of course, Beto doesn't want to do the stuff that Abbott's doing with DPS inspecting trucks. But on the question of Title 42, which effectively is what this is all about, this is what Beto has said on the matter. Beto O'Rourke knocks Biden for ending Title 42 without a plan to deal with the influx of migrants. Despite the fact that Beto has been, very publicly, when it was, useful for him, a big critic of the racist origins and implications of Title 42, you can see here that his enthusiasm to really changing the status quo is not that not significantly more than, for example, Greg Abbott. Now, Beto, of course, has a lot of if, ands, and buts around this, but it is not a kind of 1-over-1 when compared to what Abbott's policies are here.
I mean, it really reminds me of like Kamala hitting Joe Biden on not supporting busing, and then everyone's like, "Well, what's your different policy?" It's like, actually, no, this is very complicated, and I'm not sure how I differ. I mean, Beto's really frustrating because it's like everything he does seems very unhelpful. Whether it's taking the maximalist position on, yeah, we're coming for your effing guns in Texas. Like, who are you going to get to enforce that, buddy? What law enforcement agency is going to be like, oh, I'm Beto's gun squad, and then taking, like apologizing for like CRT and accepting the framing of like all that stuff is really annoying.
I know it's a difficult state of affairs for sure, but we'll certainly have more as these things develop, and we're going to be talking a lot more about Mexico in just a second. We're going to bring on Kurt Hackbarth. Just really quick pitch before we do that. Please, if you like the work that we've been doing on the show, consider supporting us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff coming up in the post game this weekend. We have a really fun episode lined up for y'all. With our friend and comrade Lillian Chechirchia, who is talking to us about the history of what we call liberal or civic rights, and the role that socialists have played in building those, and really talking philosophically about how socialists think and argue for and uphold these really, really critical things. So that's going to be coming out for y'all on Sunday. Also, just wanted to note too, we're going to have more announcements logistically about this, but we're going to do a kind of meetup happy hour for people who are Solidarity subscribers and above. I think not next Thursday, but Thursday, April 28th. So if you're in that tier, look out for something. We're trying to find a good time and place to do that.